What is going on, traders? Welcome back to the Traveling Trader. Happy Friday to you. I love when it's Friday. I'm sure you guys do too. Let us get right into it. So I wanted to talk about Bitcoin, and are these Bitcoin longs here? Is this something dangerous for Bitcoin? You may or may not have heard about the Bitcoin longs being at an all-time high, at least as it relates to the Bitfinex longs on Bitcoin that you see here. This obviously doesn't take into account BitMEX. BitMEX isn't really that transparent about their information the way Bitfinex is, but Bitfinex is a good source, a good data point to go off of historically. So we'll look at that, and then I'll take a look at Bitcoin's technical analysis in general, and then I'll go over a couple of stocks that have netted us big wins. The last 2 months particularly have been insane in the stock market, giving us crypto-like gains. If you want access to the Trade Alerts, link is in the description. We'll go over that later in the video, but let me get started talking about Bitcoin. So looking at Bitcoin on the daily chart, this isn't really anything new, or sorry, this is the weekly chart. This isn't really anything new. I've talked about this ad nauseum, but Bitcoin is clearly forming this descending channel on the weekly here that you see here. This, while the asset is in this channel, is bearish because the price is going down. The expected breakout from this most of the time is a bullish breakout. So that is what we are expecting eventually, or what you should expect eventually on Bitcoin. The question rather, is how far can it dip before it breaks out? And if you look at the bottom, obviously one of the characteristics of a descending channel is that it keeps making lower lows. So currently the support is at around 6,300, and the longer this channel continues, the lower that support level is. So looking at Bitcoin on the weekly, you'll see that we're forming this golden cross here between the 50 and the 100. I don't know how easy it is to see on my chart, but the 50 is orange and the 100 is yellow, and you see them converging here. So that for the long term is definitely a good sign. I've talked about this before as well, the fact that Bitcoin has already retested the 200 weekly EMA, just as it did back here in 2015. And after it does this and it falls below the 21 weekly EMA, which is this white line, and retests the 200 MA, then we usually see a bull run. Obviously, Bitcoin is still a young asset, but in its short history, in its last 9 years or so, we usually see the start of a gradual bull rally at that point. So all things considered, it looks like Bitcoin, on at least on the weekly, is bullish, but that is, a long-term, or could be a very long-term time frame. And you look here, the VFI is finally curling upwards again. This right here is the volume flow indicator, which is a volume-based indicator used to try to project momentum, or the way that the stock or the coin is flowing from a volume perspective, whether whether the volume is largely positive or negative, right? So anyway, that is Bitcoin on the weekly. If we look at the daily, you'll see that I overlaid Bitcoin's longs here. If you look at the indicators here, this BTC USD longs, and you'll notice that the longs are at an all-time high, at least for as far back as we have chart data, right? You see here this blue line, this is longs at an all-time high. So what does Bitcoin do when longs get this high? Well, we can take a look at what it's done historically. This could sometimes be a deceptive indicator, and I'll tell you why right now. But here is, we'll just set this range for the Bitcoin longs here. But if you take a look at this, you'll see here that when Bitcoin longs are at a high, it generally coincides with a price crash in Bitcoin. Now, there is a bit of a chicken or the egg problem here. So don't think that correlation means causation. Don't confuse correlation and causation, meaning that just because Bitcoin longs are at a high when Bitcoin's price has crashed, that the longs themselves cause the crash. However, and a big however, sometimes the longs do cause the crash, right? So if you take a look here, like back in March 2018, or I shouldn't say cause, but they are definitely a catalyst in the crash. You'll see that the longs came before the price crash, but sometimes the longs increase because the market has decided that that is a market bottom, right? So the longs start increasing after the price has reached a bottom, or what is perceived by the market as a bottom, just like it did here in December 2018 and early 2019 when Bitcoin was trading in the low 3,000s. the longs started to climb, and they started to climb because folks were perceiving this as a market bottom. The market was ready to accept through its own price discovery that this was the bottom, right? So that's why long started increasing. So it's not like the price crashed because long started increasing. It's long started increasing when the price crashed because traders wanted to take advantage of a rally since they perceived this to be the bottom. So don't go thinking that just because longs are at an all-time high, the price will crash. It definitely could add to the crash. So with that said, what is my opinion here? Well, Bitcoin is definitely not in the low 3,000s. We're trading in the 7,200, 7,300 range currently, right? Now, this right here is a bearish pennant, right? Because the difference between a pennant and a symmetrical triangle is a pennant comes from an identifiable trend. So in this case, you have a downtrend and then the pennant versus a symmetrical triangle, which is formed without a pole. Now, in this case, longs are at an all-time high. For some reason, this long activity does look weird to me, but let's just put that aside for now. I do think that if Bitcoin does fall below 7K, hit that 7K range or fall below, that we'll start to see these longs gobbled up and you'll see what's called a long squeeze. And yes, just as we do have short squeezes, right? When shorts are disproportionately high and the price starts going up, you'll see those shorts start to get liquidated, forcing the price even more upwards in a snowball-like fashion. That can also happen when it comes to longs. Longs are disproportionately high. If the price starts tanking and we hit 7K, either long buyers will start to close out their positions manually, or if they used a ridiculously high leverage factor, their longs will be liquidated for them by the exchange. So I do think that we are in that range because in this case, like I said before, a lot of times you'll see the number of longs start to climb because we are at a perceived bottom. However, here we've been trading range bound for quite some time, right? We've traded within this range since really the beginning of October. There was that little blip when we went up to almost 10,000. However, for the most part, we've been trading in this sideways range. And certainly for the better part of the month, we've been trading in the sideways range. So there hasn't really been any reason for these longs to go up. It's not like the market is perceiving this as a market bottom, not based on the sentiment that I'm getting, right? So there is a high chance that we will see a long squeeze to some degree or another. It doesn't mean that the price is going to crash to 5K. A long squeeze could be and just in the same way that sometimes you'll see the effects of a short squeeze, those effects could last a really short time where, the price in a short squeeze could jump up $500 within a few minutes and then all the shorts get liquidated and you never really see the long-term effects or see any long-term effects of the short squeeze. Same thing as the long squeeze, right? You could see the price dip to 6,800, 6,700 before those longs start getting closed out, and then the price tries to normalize and find support at that range. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we'll see, a crash all the way down to 5,000. Certainly could happen. The market does what it wants and you have to adjust accordingly. However, I do feel like we could be in the midst of, at least on the cusp of, a potential long squeeze that could take us down to 6,800, 6,700, at which point I'll probably long Bitcoin with some leverage. Obviously, I do buy Bitcoin on the major dips on the spot market, but in terms of trading with leverage, I do like to only trade at identifiable support and resistance levels where you're shorting at clear resistance levels and longing at clear support levels, and you do that multiple times and you can net yourself a pretty healthy profit. Again, sign up to the trade alerts if you want access to that. Link is in the description, where I do send out crypto and stock trade alerts, and we also hold regular voice chats where we discuss trades, strategies, portfolio management, what coins I'm holding, what stocks I'm holding, etc., etc. Link is in the description. Very beneficial service. Sign up if you want access to that. A couple of swing trades that were successful for us this week. Some really easy money, really, on XTZ, which is Tezos, up almost 14%. And I send these out on the Discord, as you see here. And ENG BTC, this one was pretty easy too, almost 15%. Both of these within a day, actually. I'm not really into time predictions, so I'll never say that you're going to make a certain amount by a certain day. However, when the setup is optimal, then you just have to trust the setup and, set your stop limit and hold the position until that setup either plays out or a change in market conditions forces you to reconsider. But I'll never say, oh yeah, you're going to make a certain amount of money by a certain date, or, this trade will pan out in a day or in a few hours. Anybody that tells you that doesn't know what they're doing. Let us get right into the markets. So looking at markets, they started off really strongly today on hopes that the China trade deal has been agreed upon, or at least is on the cusp of being agreed upon. But you do see the markets relatively unchanged, although the Nasdaq is up 0.25%, S&P and the Dow relatively unchanged. However, we did have some pretty big wins so far in the market in the last 2 months. But buying TD Ameritrade on the dip, it is now up 56% since we bought it. Our entire portfolio is up almost 40% in the last 2 months, which is just astronomical. And even more for those that engage in options and take the options trade alerts. Options are a different beast, so obviously you should know what you're doing before committing any money into options. But anyway, I digress. So TD Ameritrade up almost 56%. JP Morgan is another one that's been killing it for us lately. JP Morgan is up, I believe, 19% over the last 2 months or so since we bought the dip here after it retraced to the 100 MA. Let me just check on that real quick. If I look at these stocks, you'll see JP Morgan. Yep. So it's up almost 19% since buying the dip here at the 100 MA, 100 moving average. Here's a stock that I'm currently eyeing. I'll give you a freebie for those of you that aren't in the group. Home Depot currently retraced to the 200 moving average. This is a level that it's bounced off of a couple of times going back almost a year. You'll see that it has dipped again, currently finding support at the 200 moving average, almost oversold on the RSI. MACD crossover about to happen. The VFI looks like the crossover is about to happen. And this is a pretty healthy dividend paying stock. The dividend is actually $1.36 per share. Obviously, you can trade this using options as well. You don't have to buy the stocks on the spot market, but with options, they're, like I said before, it is a little more risky. It's a more involved game because you do have expiration dates, volatility, etc., other things to consider. However, I'm eyeing Home Depot like a hawk here as it fell to the 200 MA. These are the types of alerts that you'll get in the trading group. Anyway, that is it for today's video. Leave a comment if you have a comment, question, agreement, disagreement. Hit that thumbs up if you got anything out of this video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Sign up if you want access to the trade alerts. Stay safe out there, traders. Peace.